Welcome to another Friday afternoon live stream. And as usual, it's 4 o'clock, Greenwich Mean Time, Greenwich Mean Time Zone. It's nice to live in the part of the world where they first thought about how time works and how you get 24-hour days and where should they draw the point where time starts, where a new day starts. 0, London, of course, and the borough of Greenwich, because that's where all the sailing ships came and went from. So it's nice to be in Greenwich Mean Time. Welcome to my Friday afternoon live stream. As I always say, these are my own thoughts. They're not official for Youth with a Mission or anything else. Also, this is available on a number of platforms. And if you want to ask questions or make comments, the best platform for that is my website, which is lynngreen.blognet, whatever, but not .com. And it's too expensive. But you also find that it's available as a podcast on Spotify and iTunes. Pass it around. One of the things I really like is when I go to different places in the world. I was in the Middle East recently, and so many people, by many I mean like 6 or 7 out of a crowd of 60, would come up to me and say, I really appreciate your live streams. Thank you very much. I think for those of you who live in larger cities and you're in big churches and so on, these live streams may be something you listen to a little bit. But when you're in a remote location and there's not a lot of good teaching and encouragement, these live streams are helpful. So, for a change today, I'm going to talk about something that I'm also in the process of writing about. And if I'm successful, then I will post that later today. By successful, I mean not too many interruptions. But I want to talk to you about pain management. Now, there are pain management clinics, and really, the pain that they're talking about is usually physical pain and various medications and techniques, mental techniques for keeping the pain from driving you round the twist. But I'm talking about another kind of pain. I'm talking about that deep inner pain, which at unexpected moments rises up, maybe in eyes teared up or voice breaking a little bit, maybe at an awkward time, a time when you really feel self-conscious about it. And it might be completely unexpected, but a word or even a smell or a song will trigger a deep pain that rises temporarily to the surface and goes back down. And I want to talk to you about that kind of pain management. And I want to talk because of a gathering that we had earlier this week. Marty and me, we're blessed to have a good-sized house to live in, a real home that people enjoy coming to. It's got a good sense of, well, we said the other day, it's like a thin place. You know what a thin place is? It's sort of a little phrase to describe a place where it seems like it's a place where the presence of God is close, and you walk in and you feel the impact, in some ways consequences, of God's presence. And that happens to places that have been soaked in prayer, places where people have been worshiping, places where people have been living lives that are manifestations of walking under the lordship of Jesus. So anyway, we've also been blessed over the years with lots of friends. And we had about 15 of our friends. We've done some particular ministry of sort of bringing a sense of family within the body of Christ in different parts of the world together, for 7 or 8 years, I suppose. But during the pandemic time, it's gone into mothballs in a sense, gone entirely online, and it's not the same when you can't actually be together. So we were getting together to share and get up to date with one another and seek God about the way forward. What is God wanting next? And we began to share around the circle, gave a time for everybody, and people were generally really quite honest things were going well and things were going badly. The last 2 years have been God's faithful, but tough. And we came to one of our friends who we haven't known as long, because some of these friends are friends of 40 years. But this particular person is a very mature woman of God, full of grace and maturity and communication skills and all. And she began to say, this has been a tough 2 years, and the tears welled up. And 3 of our friends were joining us by Zoom, and she was one. And we just wanted to reach out and touch her, because being touched is part of management of that kind of pain. But we couldn't. We could express our love for her. But she said something really important. And it might be important for you, because some of us let our feelings and our experiences be readily seen. We're quite transparent, and what you see is what you get. Others of us bottle it up, but few of us, well, it's inappropriate for us ever to always confess exactly how we're feeling, and always letting it be seen with our facial expressions, our body language. But she said, I just sat down the other day and I said to God, Lord, I am just full of holes. I think what she meant is I feel like I've been shot up. And the image that came to my mind is, somebody shot up, still alive, but at least in cartoon form, you'd have somebody shut up, but they can't hold anything. You pour the grace of God in, and it just spews out. And I think that's what she was kind of conveying, that she just felt not just wounded, but unable to hold on to God's grace. And she said when she did that, it began a healing process, which I think at that point a couple of days ago was a week or 10 days underway. I thought, how good God is. And it illustrates an important point. The first thing that we need to enact, take a step towards when we're really hurting, is to acknowledge it. First before God, and also before others, appropriate others. We were in an appropriate group. Everybody knew this dear woman and loved and loved her. She was safe. And she could say, she didn't have to hold her image of always being mature and walking in victory. She didn't have to keep that up. She could let it down for a while. She could always do that. And that's not a bad thing. It's not hypocritical. But she could let it down for a little while and just say, inside, this is what I'm feeling. And I am not here advocating, as you might already have gathered, that we always just let all that we're feeling show on a downcast facial presentation, or on slumped shoulders and looking down at the ground. I'm not suggesting that. But there is a place for, in the right context, expressing exactly what's going on to the best of our ability. Words are never perfect, but they can convey meaning, especially to people who are empathetic to us. We all kind of know when we have a friend or friends who are empathetic and can stand alongside us in difficult times. And we know when we don't have that depth of relationship with the person or people we're with. And so wisdom is needed for that. And I hope everybody who watches this can at this point be thinking, yeah, I know who I can just be myself with. I know who I can appropriately share what's going on deep inside me, and they will understand, not judge me, stand with me. Well, we went on to share how we were doing, and there were lots of different stories. And one of the stories that then followed on from there was, it impacted me, and I think the others too, so significantly that even after the meeting, I went to the woman who shared it and said, could you tell me more? And when she had finished telling me the story, I said, could I share your story with others as long as I don't give away your identity? And she said, sure, by all means. So here's the story. She had been looking forward to a trip of several weeks when she was going to visit one of her children, and she was going to be in proximity to a place where she could have a spiritual retreat and get rich input. So in her imagination, and I've said many times, don't we love the fact that God gave us imagination, that we can anticipate a future? And I hope that you are a sort of person who anticipates a better future. If you can't anticipate a better future than the past, then it's difficult to live a positive life. But God has given us this ability it's the first step of creation, where in the image of God, we are little creators. And it starts in our imagination, where we can imagine a better future. Well, her imagination was filled with the happy thoughts of time with the daughter and time in spiritual retreat, and maybe a little bit of time out shopping and a few other things. And when she got there, the circumstances she expected just were not in place. And as a result, without going into unnecessary detail, she summarized by saying, these were the worst weeks of my life so far. So what a contrast, something that is anticipated as a wonderful experience that turns out to be deeply trying, disappointing, discouraging, tempting her to judge others and to resent what she was experiencing and to complain that nothing was going the way she expected, and it wasn't fair, and it wasn't right, and it wasn't good hospitality, and whatever. And this went on for that whole period. And that's why she could say it wasn't just a couple of weeks, but it was the entire several weeks of, as she said, living hell on earth. And although I would imagine hell will actually be worse. But that was her experience. And as she was leaving, she had a lesson from one of the mature people at the spiritual retreat place. And she said, these things come our way, and they come to build our faith. And we need to expect them from time to time. Not that they give any warning that they're coming, because they crop up in the most unexpected times and places. But rather, when they come, we have a deeply seated understanding of what we're supposed to do. And this mature spiritual guide, as it were, gave her 3 simple pointers that really struck me. And I've put them into practice today. But when the unexpected happens and when it's really painful, you meet it, first of all, with trust. God, who's with us, in us, all around us, is the one who has the power to make good his promise, which is he works everything together for good to those who love him and are called according to his purposes. So in a sense, there's just one condition on that incredible promise. Everything together for good. The one condition is a deep trust in God. That he loves us. We're called according to his purposes. We're in a place of the Lordship of Jesus. See, it doesn't work for just anybody who calls out God. Well, it might, but it might not. However, when we love him and when we are called according to his purposes, we've aligned ourselves with his will, then he promises everything will work together for good. So even today, I've had a couple setbacks, and I've immediately thought, thankful for my friend who shared this. Okay, Lord, I trust you in this. This is not what I planned. This is postponing important things I had to do. I'm going to have to reschedule them. I needed this time. Now I have to do something else because I've been asked and I think it's the right thing to do. But I trust you. I trust you. You're in this. And then, after overcoming what almost always is our initial first response of despair or discouragement or frustration or anger or whatever, when we overcome that with trust, then the next thing is we have to move forward in the unwanted, threatening, uncomfortable, distracting circumstances, the things that's happening around us or to us that we did not anticipate and would not have wanted. We live in the moment of that experience, however long it lasts, by faith. That means that even when things are really grim, we are saying, Lord, what do you want me to do here? You see, the life of faith is always tuned in to the Holy Spirit so that when He wants to say something to us, we will hear and respond. Oftentimes, though, when unwanted, undesirable events or persons enter our lives, we lose sight of faith and we just go into trying to cope with the circumstances. We go into a negative mindset. How can I get out of this? But when we go back to faith and we say, okay, Lord, what do you want to do with this? And He doesn't always answer immediately, but all He's wanting us to do is have a conscious awareness that He's there and He can change things as He and His wisdom decides to do. I want to say here, though, I don't want to give the impression that everything that happens to us was already pre-planned by God and He already knows what He's going to do. I don't get that from Scripture. I get the picture of a God who weeps over His creation, who weeps over His people. I get the picture of a God who says to people, turn, please. I get a picture of the God who put in place a prophet who loved a woman who loved adultery, and who would go and who bought her in the first place and had to buy her back. The husband who pays an enormous price of humility to regain the love of the person that he's committed himself to. So I get the idea of God being really thoroughly relational. When He loves us, it means He loves us through our lives and the pathways they take. And He's never caught by surprise, but He's not overseeing a fixed universe, okay? Enough of that. I know there are different views on this, but a lot of what we do by way of responding rightly in God's will and purpose and in His ways don't make sense if we think it's all predetermined anyway. So I think our responses are genuinely important, and that means walking by faith in the circumstances as long as they last. And part of that then is expressed in the language of faith, which is praise and thanksgiving, even if we can't say it out loud. And that's why James wrote, "Consider it all joy, my brethren and sisters, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance," that's walking in faith, "have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." Again and again in the New Testament, especially in the epistles, you'll find statements about suffering, but suffering in faith. And on the other side of it, there's joy. Weeping may last for the night, but joy comes in the morning. So those are the 3 steps. And I just think, man, those are really helpful. I'm exercising them today. I trust I don't forget them. I trust I don't let them go out of practice in my life, because if I can practice this for a few weeks, then I've got it integrated deep in my spirit. So I heard the story. And then she said, and then the Lord gave me a couple of immediate opportunities to put this story, or put the principles into practice in another story. I said, oh, could I hear one of them? And she said, sure. She said, so I was flying back into London, and I was coming into Terminal 2, and my husband was going out of Terminal 5 just about exactly the same time. And we had kind of arranged it so that we could coincide, knowing we couldn't actually see each other, but we could coincide, and we arranged for him to leave the car in the car park of Terminal 2, and then we could phone and connect. So that all worked fine, and the plan was you leave it in that car park, and he did it all. He took the photos, sent the photos to her phone, so she had a picture of the row and the parking place where it was, and the car there. And then the last thing she said, and you did remember to put the keys in the wheel well, didn't you? And there was a long silence. And he said, they're in my pocket. Now, she confessed that her first reaction was to rip a strip off him, to make him feel stupid, to vent her anger on him, but she didn't. And she thought, well, you know, I've done this sort of thing myself, so I wouldn't want the person on the receiving end to be angry at me. So she said, no, it's okay. And he said, oh, I won't go on my trip. I'll come over to Terminal 2. And she said, no, the Lord will work this out. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. So he said, well, I'll try to get the keys to you, and I'll let you know what happens. And so he went to the nearest airline help desk and was explaining to the two people on the check-in desk. And because he was already checked in, couldn't come back out. And there was a man standing to the side. And after a little bit, he said, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation, and I'm going to Terminal 2 right now. I'd be happy to take the keys and give them to your wife. So my friend said, oh, wonderful. Here's her phone number. He said, fine, I'll go over there. I'll wait for her. I'll phone her. And when she comes out, I'll have the keys waiting for her. So he could phone his wife. And the whole thing worked wonderfully. And the guy was really nice to her. And she got in the car with the keys, of course, driving away and thinking, God is good. I'm going to remember this. I'm going to remember this. And for me, having heard that story, I want to just finish by saying that a lot of my reading this week has been in the Psalms in the 50s range. And in virtually every one of those Psalms, from 50 on through to 60, there's an element of David facing a major setback and doing exactly this. So I just picked out one of those, and let's see, which one was it? Psalm 57. And this is the introduction to it. He says, this is to the chief musician, set to the tune of Do Not Destroy, a miktam of David, which is a record of memorable thoughts. When he fled from Saul in the cave. Now, if you go back and read that story, you'll find that Saul had set out with, I don't remember how many thousand, I think it was 3,000 men to track down David and kill him. Now, David had some hundreds of followers by that time, too. You can't hide with hundreds. So I would imagine that he was hiding in a cave on his own, or maybe with one or two people, and that his men had to disperse. I've been in that area of Israel, and it is absolutely fascinating. It's a very rocky area. I suppose it was volcanic at one time, and there's a lot of scrub bushes and trees growing out of it, a little bit of grass here and there. But here and there are caves. Some of them small, some of them really quite large, but it's just honeycombed with caves. And that was the region, not far from where the battle with Goliath apparently took place. And that was a region where we think David was. So he was in one of those many caves, and Saul was on the other side of that mountain. And this is what he writes. Can you imagine that, by the way? Can you imagine going to sleep? knowing that you've got an army who's trying to kill you? You're not sure where they are? Be gracious to me, O God. Be gracious and merciful to me. For my soul finds shelter and safety in you. And in the shadow of your wings I will take refuge and be confidently secure until the destruction passes by. He's met this with trust already, hasn't he? I will cry to God Most High, who accomplishes all things on my behalf, for he completes my purpose in his plan. He will send from heaven and save me. Faith. He calls to account him who tramples me down. God will send out his loving kindness and his truth. My life is among lions. I must lie among those who breathe out fire, the sons of men whose teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongue a sharp sword. Be exalted above the heavens, O God. Let your glory and majesty be over all the earth. You see, the language of faith is praise and worship. They set a net for my steps. My very life was bowed down. They dug a pit before me. Into the midst of it, they themselves have fallen. He's in faith. My heart is steadfast, O God. My heart is steadfast and confident. I will sing, yes, I will sing praises to you. And these are familiar lines that we put to songs and we worship with them. The final couple verses here is, awake my glory, awake harp and lyre. I will awaken the dawn. I will praise and give thanks to you, O Lord, among the people. I will sing praises to you among the nations, for your faithfulness and loving kindness are great, reaching to the heavens, and your truth to the clouds. Be exalted above the heavens, O God. Let your glory and majesty be over all the earth. So, pain management, the pain of loss, the pain of unwanted circumstances, the pain of illness, the pain of having to see loved ones die alone because of government restrictions, the pain of burying people close to you, the pain of being afraid that you're coming down with something that could be deadly to you, the pain of seeing the loss of a business because it had to be closed for so long. And there are many, many other pains, the normal pains of life when there isn't a pandemic on. But wherever you are in this process and whatever you've faced, could I just encourage you to try to bury, like good seed, the words of these friends of mine into your hearts. It all starts by saying, when you really are in pain, sitting before God and saying, I'm just full of holes. I'm all shot up. I can't even hold your grace. And then going on. And the Lord gives grace to that kind of confession. That kind of confession often opens the doors of God's mercy and grace to pour in. And then you begin to trust. And then you begin to move forward in faith. This is not the end. There will be a better tomorrow. And you begin to develop the language of faith, which is thanksgiving and praise. I hope this is helpful. It helped me a lot, so I passed it on. Thanks very much for watching.